I begin today by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded today. Also pay respects to the elders past and present, and extend that respect to any other Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who may be listening today. This is Melanated in Melbourne, a podcast designed to give an insightful look into the Australian lifestyle from the lens of two Black American besties. Welcome back, Melanation. I'm Ri'chard.
And I'm Nicole.
And this is Melanated in Melbourne.
Melanated in Melbourne.
Welcome back. You sound lovely as always. Have you been stretching? You've been working out?
Thank you. No, I've been doing none of those things. I should be taking better care of myself. But you know what? We are surviving.
Yes, but will we be thriving soon?
Yes, we will. I'm currently in the midst of planning my wedding, and it's coming down to the wire. I'm leaving for the States next week. Speaking it into existence that we're just going to have a good time.
Yes.
Touching
wood, all things. So for our people watching on the internet, we have a special guest for us. Yay! And people who are listening on Spotify, there's a mystery guest that you will find about soon.
Ooh,
hello.
That was the... Scary.
That was a scary mystery.
That was a scary, not trademark Twilight Zone sound that they came up with.
Royalty free.
Twilight Zone.
Yes.
Twilight Home sound.
Yeah, exactly.
Hi.
Yeah, but if you'd like to introduce yourself.
So my name is Christian for people who...
Welcome to the podcast, Christian! Our audience, sorry, they just love to clap.
They're so
they
obsessed.
I have heard that before.
Yeah.
And they end their applause very abruptly.
They are. They're very kind.
They're very
audience.
punctual. They're like,
punctual audience.
Yeah, more time for talking.
Yes, it is. Well, thank you for coming around,
Oh,
Christian.
thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Well, before we get into it properly, obviously... Oh, my brain just went out the window.
That's all right. Bring it back in. Bring it back through the door. Because I thought we were going to talk about the live show that we had last week.
Yes, we were. There it is.
Came over here.
There it is. Tag team. You were
Boomerang.
Well, I mean, since you've already started, why don't you talk about our live show?
We had Melanated in Melbourne live last week. We were once again with the great people at Stay Gold. I'm sorry, I had to shout them out again because they're just so fabulous. They treat us so well. They're so nice. They're so lovely. Jen is great. Aaliyah, amazing. Tommy at the door. Yep. Shout out to all of them for taking such good care of us.
And
that
Alex,
night.
Our sound person, because I kept calling them Ben because it was Jen and Ben last time. And I was like, Ben, can you help me with? And he didn't correct me. He was like, oh yeah, sure. I know. And then Luke was like, his name is Alex. I'm like, oh my God, I am so sorry. He's like, it happens. I'm like, does it happen? Alex and Ben are not close.
I will call somebody the wrong name to their face, and it's just like
confident.
Well, there's doubt there, so that's why I'm always afraid to say someone's name.
Yeah.
Hey, unless
you.
I really know.
Yeah. Be careful.
It's like
you could be Ben too.
Everyone's one step away from being Ben.
Yeah,
we could all be Ben.
You are one confident Nicole away from being Ben.
Exactly. It can happen to any of you. But the staff there is so great. And then thank you for everyone who came out to the show itself, because I was like, well, it's rainy and cold. People are probably going to stay in, because I know that's probably what I would have done. I would have canceled. When it rains in Melbourne on a cold day,
it's
on a weekend.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know what that means now?
What's it mean?
It means you have to go to something.
Christian, please.
It's good karma.
Yeah,
it's good. You got to put that juju in.
Fair enough. I was just being honest about who I am as a person. As soon as it rains, I'm just like, I don't know about these plans, y'all, but people came through to hang out with us, and we talked the entire time, which is very surprising.
Not surprising at all. We talked the entire time, every single time.
Yes.
But what was surprising was the amount of people that bought tickets and still showed up anyway, because it was rainy, it was cold, and the tickets were like $20. Sometimes you're like, you know what, my rest is more important than that. So we do really appreciate the people who showed up. We sold like 80 tickets. I think 60 people still showed up.
Oh, that's fantastic.
They were there. They're engaged.
Okay.
One of the things we found with Australians is they'll go to a live show and then they will just sit there and talk over you. But I feel like during that entire performance, they were just engaged and laughing with us and just interacting. And it was beautiful.
Yes. The only downside of the night was the fact that I was forced to eat Vegemite twice.
Yep.
And I was, Christian.
Did you hate it?
I don't like it.
Yeah.
It is not my jam.
Okay, I feel like someone needs to make it so you'll like it.
No, Christian.
There is a way. There's a way.
Christian, this sounds very forceful.
Yeah, this sounds like an acquired... This is Stockholm Syndrome. I said that at the show.
Yeah.
Because there are people who grow up eating it. Did you grow up here? Where did you grow up?
I grew up here.
Okay.
And I do eat Vegemite, but it has to be a very specific way.
Yeah.
The bread has to be good.
Okay, the bread has to be good.
It has
to have a butter.
It has to have A lot of butter.
A lot of butter.
A lot of butter. It has to, and you have like the thinnest scraping of Vegemite swimming in butter.
See, but isn't that proof right there? It's not that good if you
need to mask it. If you have to mask it with all these, if the conditions have to be perfect to enjoy something.
Yeah. But like surprisingly, I've gotten to the stage where I'm going back to the toaster doing multiple slices of Vegemite. So you do eventually get there.
Okay.
I mean, I'm 8 years in. I'm okay to just
It's not for everyone.
I get it. You know, we should be more diplomatic in case Vegemite wants to sponsor us one day, but we're not doing it.
It's okay to turn things down. We don't have to accept every free thing that we're given. But speaking of free things that we're given, we have also been invited to our 3rd red carpet, which honestly, I'm ready to do. Yep.
Oh, thank you, audience.
They're so attentive. They're just ready.
Silence, audience. All right, there you go. Sorry. They're so well trained.
Amazing.
And you only got to yell a little bit.
But we have been invited to our 3rd red carpet event.
Yeah, we're going to Hedwig and the Angry Itch next week.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see the show. I've always heard so much about it, but I'm really excited to see it.
Oh, you've seen it.
Yeah, have you seen it, Christian?
I've seen the movie and the stage show twice.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Oh, so you could play the lead if you wanted to.
We played it at work once.
Aww.
As like after work, let's just all hang out thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there was sing-alongs.
Oh,
okay.
That's so cute. That's the best part about a musical.
Yeah.
The soundtrack.
I'm excited to see it because I was a late comer to musicals, so whenever I get into them, I like to see the film, like see the presentation, see the film first, so I can know the emotions behind it. Because if I hear the lyrics, I'm like, what were you feeling when you were saying X, Y, Z? But if I can picture it in my head after I've seen it, I'm like, oh yeah, they were in it. They were down bad. They were upset. They were angry. They were happy, and just being able to. So I'm excited to see it, so I can listen to the musical afterwards and be like, yes, the feelings.
I get that because sometimes I do wish in real life we could have subtitles because sometimes I can't. I don't know why my brain is the way that it is now, but like sometimes I'm like, I just would love a little subtitling sprinkled, just holding up some words like this just so I can understand what was going on.
I'll give you a tip.
Yes.
If you see the film,
okay.
Look for the making of. See, I'm a Generation Xer.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
And we grew up with DVDs.
Yes.
That
Yes.
means we had
Period.
special features.
Oh, I do miss that. I do miss that.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Oh, kids today.
And the outtakes and the deleted scenes.
Bloopers as well.
Love
and then
it.
the
If you can be bothered watching the commentary. But like the making of Hedwig is just as good as the movie.
Oh my gosh.
Like
I
it tells a really good story of like punk and drag and like mashing them together and like just making the shows. So it's before anyone knew about John Cameron Mitchell.
John Cameron Mitchell. That's right.
Yeah, so it tells how he met his collaborator. I'm going to get it wrong. Josh Trusk? It's something like that.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they met on a plane.
Yeah.
And then put this collaboration together and it just grew from there. And
That's incredible.
yeah, and
so
I think
beautiful.
that like particularly like these days when it's so hard to talk to strangers and meet new people.
Yes.
It shows you like it's just this beautiful story of collaboration.
Oh my gosh, we used to meet people all the time back in the
Right?
day, y'all. Like you were forced to. We would
Yeah.
have all these like different kind of avenues. Like I don't know. It was just like a lot of like what do they call them? Third places.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're categorized
No one
as
had
now.
AirPods.
Nobody had
Yeah.
headphones in.
Yeah.
If you did have on like a Walkman,
Yeah.
you were exercising. You were like going for a walk or something like that, but it wasn't necessarily something that you had with
And
you
your
all the time.
batteries died.
And the CDs were skipping as you were exercising with the skipping pad. You had to like place it carefully. You were just like jogging like this. The skip resistant
Oh
one.
my
I always
gosh.
tested that.
Scratching your CD was the worst back
Yeah.
in the day. Oh, it was just
Ugh.
awful.
But you could always like make like mixtapes and stuff.
Oh my god.
Sitting on the radio waiting
love
for it. Like to get your little, yep, that's the song I
Oh
wanted.
my god. I remember hearing things of people making mixtapes for other people. Like that was like a romantic gesture.
Yeah.
I wish we could bring something like that back.
I mean, you still could.
I mean,
technically.
I guess you could. But
Spotify's not the same.
No,
Yeah,
no. I mean, like you
it's
could literally. I mean, I guess a lot of things don't really have disc drives. Right? You can make mixed CDs if you wanted,
Yeah.
if you were really pressed. But
Yeah.
I suppose, yeah. And I also kind of feel like when it comes to music nowadays, people are like, I want to listen to what I want to listen to. And
Yeah.
it's almost like you're kind of like not that you close yourself off from other people, but sometimes you have to be in a certain mood to hear new music.
Yeah.
Or hear something unfamiliar.
How do young people these days discover new music?
I think this all the time. Well, the older ones like us, we had to listen to our parents' music. We had to listen to our aunties, our uncles. Like, we had to listen to the music from like the 70s and before that because we had no control over the music. Because
just
we
listen
had
to the
hear-
radio. It was like,
and the radio exposed you to new different things as well. So
It was all Rick Dees and Ryan Seacrest. That
Oh
is a
my
reference
God.
that has aged us.
oh my gosh, even
Ryan Seacrest.
Ryan Seacrest.
What is he doing? Has he come out
I was
yet?
just going to ask. I was just going to ask, what is Ryan up to? But I don't know.
The fact that neither of us know.
Sponsor us, Ryan Seacrest.
Oh, I hope so. If he dies in the next couple of days, like, that was your...
Don't put that on. Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
But what if he's already gone? How do we know?
No, stop. No, surely he isn't. I don't know why I'm crying out as if it's like, don't take it. Don't take Big Mama. I don't know why I'm screaming it like that. But yeah, I don't want to. I don't know. Shit's crazy right now. So
It is.
Yeah.
It is. That's why I'm like, I didn't say it. I wasn't the one who said it. Like, I hope you're
Yeah.
well, Ryan Seacrest.
Yes.
Seacrest out. I don't know.
Seacrest out or Seacrest in.
How grim are the times when nostalgia is like so enjoyable right
Yeah.
now?
Honestly, like the whole live show we're doing, it was like nostalgia core, and like
Yeah.
that was going to get us through.
We're just peak millennials. We can't help it. We're
Yeah.
just like, you remember how when we didn't have computers, how we had to book flights? Like this is like it's like stuff like that.
How did we get here?
I don't know.
We should have warned you. There's always going to be a billion tangents.
Yeah. That's fun. I like that.
Yeah, there's going to be tangents and talking about how things were before technology came through. Like I always think about like the show Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I'm like half of the issues that they had in the show wouldn't exist today because they have cell phones and stuff now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Showing up to the wrong restaurant, getting dates
Yeah,
wrong.
or like if you're not outside when you say you're going to be outside, like, hey, I'll meet you in front of this place at 5:00, and then you don't rock up until like 5:15, and your friend has already left.
Yeah, or you call them. And
Or
left a
that other friend is
voicemail.
late, and you don't know. Yeah, and
Like I left you a voicemail. Like I wasn't in my house.
Yeah.
so many things left to chance.
Wow.
Those were the days. Okay.
Chaotic moments now, but there's a lot of conveniences that I'm grateful for. So I will
Oh, yeah.
take the good with the bad and just roll
Absolutely.
and do the best we can with it.
Yeah.
But just to keep us slightly on topic, because I want to make sure that we can cover all the things we can. Today's episode, we're going to be discussing harm reduction around drugs, and like drug culture as a whole in Australia, in America. And this is a topic that we've wanted to have for a while. Like a lot of times we have things we can talk about our opinions, but we wanted to have people who are actually well versed in the source material. Like, oh yes, I know XYZ for a fact. Now I think it's this, just because this is a podcast that we're educating, but also like entertaining at the same time. So when we're telling things, we want to be correct about it, rather than like, I think it's this. Go tell your mother. This is what it is.
Yeah.
You have got the right person on. I just have to say, I love talking about marginalized communities that normally don't get a voice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Queer communities, intersectionality. Let's put it all on the table. Let's talk about it. Because Australia has a very unique drug culture and harm reduction culture. Have you heard the tall poppy syndrome?
Yes.
Yes.
They referenced it.
We talk about
many
every
a
other
time,
episode. We
many
talk
a
yeah.
time.
But like I think for like particularly marginalized community, it hits us twice as hard because we're like, not only can that no one wants to talk about what they're good at, but like it's like, oh, you're back in the closet. Like, shut up, don't talk about that. We don't want to talk about that. Whereas like we're part of communities that need to be talking about that.
Yes.
And like it's a pretty amazing story when you think about the history of particularly people who use drugs and how different like our journey has been, particularly with things like HIV, the queer community, intersectionality, laws, the war on drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we're keeping score with the war on drugs, the drugs won.
Yeah.
Like they
The drugs won, and the aftermath was everybody else.
Yeah.
Like the war on drugs, it's almost worse than homophobia or being prudish about like sex education, because the roots of the war on drugs is racism.
Yes.
Yep.
Period.
Absolutely. And in the States, we saw that with Nixon targeting African-American communities and people who were protesting the Vietnam War.
Yes.
If you didn't like you, okay, let's find a way to target you. In Australia, we can see the racism in the war of drugs here when you consider the over-incarceration of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Those people are in jail for drug charges mostly.
Yep.
Like it's one of the easiest ways to target marginalised communities.
Wow.
And in Australia, there's lots to be really ashamed of in in terms of drug history and how we treat people, but also lots of moments of pride for Australians. Like recently, it's the first time in the world any judge has recognised stigma as being detrimental to people's health and having a causal effect on a death in custody. So these recognitions can feel like small moments, but they're actually monumental shifts in the world, like they've never happened before.
Yeah, I guess it's like that's how it is with progress sometimes. It's incremental.
Yeah, and it's like
but it's still progress.
A lot has to go wrong before people
Gosh, yes.
turn to see the light. Like,
Yeah.
Ooh, but before we go into that, I want to give how we got you on the show in the first place, and then we can basically talk about your credentials, and then we'll just chop at it.
Sure.
So earlier, like I mentioned, that we wanted to talk about this for ages, and one of the things that I noticed here, because in America, it's like if you do drugs, you'll like don't have sex, don't do drugs, you'll die immediately. Like don't we dare in our school? Like most of my education was in the state public system.
Is it Darren the
Darren the Lion,
the drug lion?
Oh, Darren.
Yeah, Darren the drug lions. Like all drugs were gateway drugs. Everything's gonna ruin your life. So I was terrified.
Yes.
But when I came here, I started noticing that a lot more people than you think are doing cocaine. First of all, second of all,
they be busting it out every chance they get. Work holiday party,
literally
baby shower.
So many things. You're like, y'all are in professional. What the? And
For
like, so it
real.
was over my head. And I'd go to festivals, and I would see like, like they were like dance wise, like this is what you shouldn't do. This is why you shouldn't mix X, Y, Z. It's not like this is how you're gonna die. But I also saw like they're starting to do drug testing to make sure you're doing it safely. And I'm like, I would love to discuss that. So I was at Gay Times back in March, as I told you before, and one of our friends was definitely had a K-hole. And like I ran into them at the time, and I'm like, oh, that's Ben. So I went to go check on them, and then that's when I started talking to the crew, and I was like, oh, what a perfect opportunity. I've been wanting this on the show for ages. So we started talking. I was talking to your coworker, Ali. Shout out to them for being like the mediator for this.
Yes.
And then we kind of got this going, and then it was like, well, it was great because I was trying to get harm reduction Victoria, but it's kind of hard to like get a contact person. Like, hi, do y'all got any brown folks in there to talk about drugs? Like, that'd be a very weird conversation to have. But
I do. I'm here.
and you were here. We're very grateful to have you. But if you want to give us a bit of your origin, how you got into harm reduction, and whatever you want to share with the listeners.
Oh, God. So way back when I was in high school, I ended up running away from home for the last 2 years, but it was a private boys' school, and I still needed to work out how to pay for school fees. And like queer people find other queer people, birds of a feather. And I met other homeless queer folks after I ran away from home under the clocks at Flinders Street Station. And a big thing that they were doing was street-based sex work, which was still around at the time.
Yep.
And basically, I used street-based sex work to pay for my high school for the last couple of years of high school, and supported myself through that way. And when you talk about particularly homeless queer communities, we lean on each other a lot for support and help because no one else was going to support us.
Yeah.
You know, we still experienced a lot of police violence back then. So, like, we had to work out ways to keep each other safe and different kind of rules. Things like I had to hide my age because nobody wanted underage street sex workers in St Kilda. But I learnt to make that issue no one else's issue because the more younger looking people who are on the street, the more the public became concerned and the more police turned up. So it was a way of like reducing harm for ourselves to like teach each other how to manage that. So presenters older. So from there, finding community that also engaged us with community health services at the time. And I don't know if you all know, but Australia was the first place in the world to fund sex worker organisations.
Really?
I did not know that.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of it came about because of the advent of HIV in Australia. So HIV first appeared in 1981.
I was just going to ask.
Yeah.
Wow.
So HIV first appeared the day after Bob Hawke was elected.
Okay.
And his health minister was Neil Blewett. Neil Blewett had a gay advisor named Bill Botel, who's still around. And this advisor was like, okay, this is a new disease that has turned up.
Yep.
Let's have a look around the world. Because Australia was like an island, had a bit of lead time to see what was going on in other countries before it became a massive issue here.
Okay.
And they saw sex workers, people who use drugs, and gay men were the people who HIV was going to hit the most. Bill basically said to Neil, hey, you don't really have a relationship with these communities.
Don't get them together.
All you've done is tried to lock them up this whole time. So telling them what to do isn't really going to get you very far because they're not going to listen. So instead, I'm giving you the big broad strokes here. They funded these 3 communities to create their own response. So out of that, AIDS councils came about. That's people representing gay men. Then you had sex worker organisations or unions and community groups representing people who use drugs. And that's been sort of the model, that what we call the partnership model, where community leads a response in partnership with health bureaucrats and government. And it's been highly effective. So
really, this sounds like a well-funded community approach.
Absolutely. So if you look at the gay men's response, that's gone like full force ahead. AIDS councils are still around. Some of them are very well funded. But things like there's never been a single recorded instance of HIV being transmitted between a female sex worker and her client, ever.
Okay.
In Australia. In Australia.
Whoa.
And the prevalence of HIV amongst people who inject drugs is like between 1% and 2%.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Like when you consider the United States, that number is like 20%.
Yeah. Yes.
So the public health outcomes sort of demonstrated themselves. And so that Australian model is kind of the model of best practice that the UN puts forward now.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I was thinking, like, I didn't know any of this, so this is very educational. But the reason I wanted to have this particular topic is because I did feel like Australia was handling things, like, obviously nothing's perfect, but I thought it was being handled better than what I was aware of in the States. Like, I know there's so many cases, like, even the statistic you were saying now, there's just people just, like, letting it run rampant, like, Reagan especially, just be like, oh, yeah, I don't care. Yeah. So it's like, hearing that I guess I was curious about the origins of why Australia cared so much about this, or at least has put more effort into this. Like, that was really educational, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, and I should also say the partnership came back around to support those communities. So we became really good friends with health bureaucrats, epidemiologists. Like when I say the name Bill Botel, he was the health minister's advisor back in the 80s when AIDS came out. But like people may also remember him during COVID. He was coming out in like advising the government on how to manage so it's kind of like the Fauci moment.
Dr. Fauci
built his career during the AIDS epidemic and then came back during COVID. So like COVID was a real opportunity for all these epidemiologists who we'd all become friends with to come back out again. So it was nice to see them. But like throughout our history, we've also learnt to adapt to different and changing, particularly political circumstances. So in the 90s, when John Howard was elected a Conservative government here in Australia, there was a lot of concern amongst our friends that, he would wind back or turn back harm reduction responses in Australia. So what our very clever partners did was they did an economic analysis of harm reduction, and it turns out something like for every $1 we invest in, say, needle exchanges, there is a direct saving of $4 to the health budget, and the community saves $27.
Come on now.
We love math.
Come on.
I'm a clap for math. Thank you, audience.
That's incredible if they can put it in such clear terms like that, because a lot of the time people argue
it's going to be too expensive.
It's going to be too expensive, and they're just like, well, my tax dollars are already at work, and I don't want to see these people, just throw them in jail. That's always like the Band-Aid on like the bullet hole. It's just kind of like it doesn't really work when all you want to do is just legislate.
That's one of the sort of magic of harm reduction is it takes people traditionally thought of as problems and actually recognizes them as valuable parts of the solution. So not only are you taking a deficit away, you're adding value back to communities. So it's an area I've been super proud of, that I've committed my whole career to. I started volunteering in harm reduction when I was like 15, and now I'm 43. So it's been almost 30 years of...
Oh, that's fantastic.
An expert by all accounts.
I mean, it does make you very acutely aware of like how much justice is connected to people thriving.
I know that's right. Yes.
And when you sort of see how little people are thriving in the world, it makes you recognize that actually there's not a lot of justice outside of the like sort of spaces that you build yourselves. That's why like places like Gay Times is so proactive in like trying to be as inclusive as possible, as non-judgmental as possible, because like we know how valuable like queer spaces are. And yeah, like this is why you see so many queer people work in alcohol and other drug services, is because we recognise the lack of justice that's still around. Drugs are still heavily criminalised. Sex work in Victoria just got decriminalised.
Yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah. It's been a long time coming, but certain politicians got into power. Shout out to Fiona Patton, who was able to sort of progress a lot of things. And one of them is recognising sex workers as the leaders of their own community responses.
For real, yeah.
And doing things like changing laws to encourage better health and more human rights.
Exactly, because it needs to be a more inclusive and more, like, I'm going to say holistic in the sense of, like, looking at the full picture rather than just being so, people are just so focused on the punishment.
Absolutely.
I remember I was at a dinner party with people who were older than me, and somebody was sharing a story about how their daughter was a nurse and she was, like, working in a late night clinic, and, you know, she was working at her clinic late one night. And then somebody who was like a user, I don't necessarily know like the mental capacity of this person, but they came into the work. I guess they caused like a bit of an upset and everything. And people at the party were just like, oh my God, they should have just shot that guy. They should have just shot this person. But I'm like, nobody wanted to hear what was going on. And then somebody was just like, raise your hand if you think all drug addicts should die. And quite literally 90% of the room raised their hand.
I mean,
like,
this is how pervasive stigma is.
Like it was unreal. And they're like, raise your hand if you don't think. And I like raised my hand, like me, one other person, and my partner. We were like the only three people that were like, yeah, no, people shouldn't die just because they're drug addicts. Like that's not.
And like, it would have been interesting to like see how many hands would have gone up if they asked, well, how many of y'all have been using drugs?
That's the thing. It's hypocritical because they're not thinking about their own drug use, the drug use with their friends, like how social that aspect is, especially here.
Yeah. It's a level of ignorance.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Around recognizing that you are not the exception or even the minority. Actually, when you say people who use drugs, people think, oh, yeah, people who use drugs. Oh, but not me.
But not me.
Or not you, or not people who... But, like, when you say but not, you're actually talking about the majority of people.
Yes.
Like, when you see violent, problematic behavior...
Yeah.
There are violent, problematic people in every circumstance.
Yes.
Everywhere.
When you relate that to drugs, that's a minority of people you're talking about. Most people who use drugs are just trying to get by their day.
Yeah.
They're dealing with really hard stuff.
But yeah, I mean, like issues that we're not privy to. We don't know. Like that's why we can't judge people. You don't know what they've gone through.
Absolutely.
And sometimes people they're just trying to like numb themselves from whatever pain that they're carrying around because we haven't figured out how to take care of people.
Yeah, that's right. And it's like it's easier to blame drugs.
It's easier to punish
than it is to fix mental health
Totally.
support access.
Yes.
It's easier to fix drugs than pay people a decent living wage.
Exactly.
Like, you know, so that's why there's so much drug stigma, because it's just easier.
Yeah, it's easier to be like, these people are bad. But it's like, I also kind of feel with the rise of music festivals that it's something that's a bit more out in the open.
Yeah.
I suppose. And then when these people, like, I think about those people, like, who are, like, raising their hands at the party saying that all drug addicts must die, I'm like, they're not thinking about their kids. They're not thinking about
the recreational...
their grandchildren or whatever the case may be, because it's like, it's a lot more widespread and prevalent nowadays for somebody younger to try drugs and experiment with drugs for the very first time, and then they feel like they can't talk to anybody about it, so they're going about it in the wrong way.
Yeah, they do it and they get themselves hurt. And it was actually one of the questions I had for you, because I know there's a lot of pill testing popping up at festivals. Like, do you know like the origin of that happening? Because again, a lot of these 18-year-olds are showing up being like, oh, there's drug dogs, let me just eat everything.
Yes.
And let me just hurt myself with that. But do you have any like information on how like the pill test, because I know the pill testing is becoming a lot more prevalent in larger festivals, and like dance-wise, I've seen you guys at multiple festivals as well.
Yes, it's nice that governments are starting to come on board and support harm reduction initiatives such as drug checking.
Good on you, government.
But so I used to be friends with before Dancewise was called Dancewise. In the 90s, it was called Rave Safe.
Oh, that's so cute.
It was started in 1995. That's how long dance-wise.
Well,
slash
30
raves.
years.
Yeah,
Real.
has been around. And in the 90s, this is back in the day when the Docklands was cool.
Oh my God!
There was a time when the Docklands was cool. Okay.
Whoa!
Historian
This
over
is
here.
blowing my mind. This is blowing my mind because people are always just, oh, the Dockland is so far. I don't want to go down there. It was cool.
It was cool. It used to just be wharfs and warehouses, and we'd have warehouse parties.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. I love a warehouse party.
Warehouse parties.
And Rave Safe, or like people who are friends with Rave Safe, would used to just put out a table, and we'd run what are called like reagent testing kits. So this is back in the day when everyone was still just getting used to like ecstasy and pills, and there were cases of like people drinking too much water, or like people like dying of like ecstasy poisoning, like contaminated tablets.
Or their cells being like overhydrated. Yeah, and they go into lice. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, and they explode.
Back in the 90s. And there are a few like smoke shops, like hippie shops, herbal shops. They would sell reagent testing kits. And we would just run those testing kits on these tables. And it's 30 years later, some of those tests we still use in drug checking now. They've got better technology now, and to access like the technical knowledge to be able to run that, we can now examine, for example, substance purity as well as constituents. So we can tell you what's in it. We can tell you the strength. We can't tell you 100% everything that's in something. Like you still have to tell the person like what you're expecting to be in it, and then we'll check how much of that expectation is realized. But it's like, it's a lot better. But this technology has been around. The ability to test substances has been around for such a long time, and it's something that we've been pushing for. It is really exciting that we're able to do it now at music festivals, but also we'll be creating a fixed site where anyone can bring any substance to. So, that's been on the table. We're waiting for an announcement.
Yeah.
That's so brilliant.
Here's a tip. It's coming out soon.
Oh, you heard it here first, folks.
I can't tell you exactly when, but it's coming out soon. But people will be able to test everything from like opiates to amphetamines to steroids. Anything that they're worried about, it's going to be a service that gives people the information to keep themselves safe.
That's so wonderful.
Incredible.
That's so wonderful because I mean, like, testing is a big thing in the States. Like, I've been an advocate in my group of friends to be kind of like, if you guys are going to do that, test your drugs first, because the fentanyl epidemic is just unreal.
Absolutely.
It's like a synthesized opioid.
Yeah.
It's legal.
Yes.
It's a legal substance, but people are mixing it in with things now just to get their product a little bit farther. But I was speaking to someone, I was walking on the street, and they gave me their card. What's her name? Cooper from Drug Policy Australia. Thank you, Cooper, for taking the time to speak with me. And he told me about like how small of an amount of fentanyl that it is that you need in order to like render the batch toxic.
Yeah, and our first sort of fentanyl roundtable in Australia was in Wagga Wagga in 2013.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I thought this was like a new thing.
It did come up because there was a series of overdoses in regional New South Wales that happened at that time. But the thing is, we keep trying to work out what's causing the American fentanyl crisis and why we haven't seen it here. And what it comes down to is like different sources of where drugs come from. Yeah. And also thinking about cross-contamination when people are illegally manufacturing different drugs. Gotcha. Because it's such a small amount that not cleaning out your equipment potentially could poison a whole batch.
That makes a lot of sense.
Of drugs that are completely unintended for that. See, in Australia, fentanyl is still used widely by doctors. Yeah. And it's available in patch form as well as an injection. So if a fentanyl epidemic, or if people were like looking to buy fentanyl, is going to happen, we kind of question why it hasn't sort of taken off in Australia as much as it would have or as much as it evidently is in the States, and Canada. So a lot of it is around the sources of pharmaceuticals and how much that is sort of integrating into like unregulated markets.
Totally. I think the opioid epidemic is kind of like the first time that we had more of a, humanized look at happens when people get hooked onto drugs, because before that in the 80s with the crack epidemic, it was like, oh, people are crackheads, let them die. They're in low socioeconomic stature, so they're not of value, you know, by capitalistic standards and whatnot. But when the opioid crisis hit America and we were seeing like, you know, people's like, again, like their sons or their daughters or their granddaughters and things like that, it was like on their front porch, that's when America was like, oh, turns out they're humans.
You are way too kind to history. Because I'm going to say a lot of it is racism too.
Yeah.
It's only after white people start dying that it gets called an opioid crisis.
Correct.
Like, you know, if it's poor black folks,
it's
like,
let them die. Let them die.
Lock them up. Let them die.
Yeah.
But as soon as it started hitting more affluent people, more middle-class white people, then it's an issue. And I think that's the problem with ignoring these injustices for so long. It will hit the...
It will come to your doorstep.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It'll come. Like, people just think that they don't have to interact with it if they don't want to. And it's like, no, it's right here. That's why harm reduction education is like something that we need to implement now to have more knowledge about it. I knew quite a few people who had an opioid issue. It always starts off like they had an injury. They would go and they would get their medication from their doctor. And then after a while, the prescription would run out. But their body is addicted to this substance. And by no fault of their own, because they needed it in order to get by, because they were in so much pain. The prescription runs out. They're like, well, what do I do? Because now I'm going through withdrawal. They turn to the streets. They turn to street drugs. They're able to get heroin. And it was like the pipeline was just, it was directly connected. And now they can get this at a much cheaper price.
Absolutely. It also sort of highlights like the addictive nature of pharmaceuticals. Like,
you say none but a word, Christian.
Yeah, I've used a lot of illicit drugs in my lifetime. The thing I felt like most dependent on and not wanting to take anymore are antidepressants. Like I'm on an SNRI. If I just chop it out, like it's overwhelming. Like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I've been on them a lot longer than I wanted to be. I don't like the way they affect me, but still there's this acceptance that, oh, it's just hard times. Just stay on your antidepressants.
Yes, exactly. It's like, well, this is a legal substance, so no harm can come to you whatsoever. And it's just like, that's not really
even close,
true.
No. And I know a lot of ADHD is being diagnosed
Woo!
now.
We're here, baby. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, which is great, but like the medical response to it.
Yeah.
Like, I recently had to go to hospital because my long-term use of crystal methamphetamines had affected my heart. This was like, I'm okay. And I'm better now. I'm on medication. I'm on a treatment plan. It's for the next 5 years. But I've been on antidepressants a lot longer than that. This is not an issue. The interesting thing, though, is for all of the people being diagnosed with ADHD and being put on lots of different stimulant-based medications, that impact that I experienced on my heart is going to potentially happen to people who are on long-term things like Vyvanse or Adderall. Like, it has the same effect on your heart, but nobody is talking about that. Because in harm reduction, we always saw it as a very short-term, crisis-based thing. But now that we're all living longer, a lot of us are talking about long-term lifestyle harm reduction. A lot of people who've used drugs over long periods of their life just think, whatever symptom or like bad health condition comes about, oh, that's just come about because of my long-term drug use. But stigma actually is a big part of that. And maybe not all of these health issues are things that I should just accept as normal. Because after I went into hospital for my heart, my cardiologist, one of the greatest things I heard from her was, this condition is not permanent.
Okay. It's manageable.
It's manageable. We can get better from this. And it's like, no one ever tells drug users that. There's always this sense that you've ruined your life, you've shortened your life.
It's the end,
Yeah, where it's like, actually, maybe this is not permanent. So that's where I'm at.
Man, shout out to that healthcare professional, because thank goodness they have a more, they're at least able to give you some sort of hope as well.
And shout out to the Australian Universal Healthcare System.
That part. Absolutely that part.
Audience, do your thing. Wow, they've been real active today. You can say, Ri'chard.
Speaking of like ruining your life, like one of the stigmas around is like doing drugs, like the policing of it, and like how you will go to jail, your entire life is ruined, like you'll never get another job. I was curious if you could talk to our listeners about like the policing of drug use here, because I know like obviously when people go to festivals, like say the police get you with XYZ substance, like what will be happening to them? Like, is it fines? Are they going like, is it on their quote unquote permanent record? Like, what is the difference there? Because like I know at least my perception of it in America was, but what's it more like here?
So here it's a lot less severe, but like going to jail is still going to jail.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
prisons do ruin your life. But then again, prisons don't solve many problems.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
They're not rehabilitation.
They're not. And like there is a lot of drug use that goes on in prisons.
In prison.
Yeah. And
Yep.
like it's the one area that harm reduction has never been able to get into. So even when we've been fully supported to run, for example, needle and syringe programs in prisons, that whole process got shut down by the prison wardens union. Like, so
I
this
wonder
was-
why.
I wonder why, but then again, how are they getting the drugs into the jail?
Yeah.
Like,
So there's a lot of unanswered.
the call is coming from inside the house.
Which is like crazy because like the harms that result from that. There's this really fascinating paper by a researcher. Her name is Carla Trelaw. She works at the University of New South Wales. She looked into the economics of like injecting in prison, and people would do things like hire out syringes, like injecting equipment, and like prisoners would be paying like $60 to hire out. And this is like equipment that has been passed around and used by potentially hundreds of people.
because they have to share needles because of like low,
Because we
supply.
can't get in there.
Can't get fresh ones.
And earlier when I talked about the community savings of having harm reduction, what that comes from is it's a lot more expensive to treat HIV, hepatitis C, than it is to just give people clean injecting equipment.
Yeah.
Taxpayers paying that money for treatment. And like when you talk about HIV, that's lifelong ongoing treatment as well.
Yeah.
Like whereas if you just gave them access to sterile injecting equipment, the health system wouldn't have to deal
Correct,
with that
because it
burden.
would create because there wouldn't be new patients being created each time. Yes.
And so, like, this is where, like, prisons are a problem. In terms of, like, prosecutions, things like music festivals, police like to target music festivals.
Yes.
It feels like they're an easy target.
Yeah.
And the impact on, like, I mean, it's a lot better in Victoria. In New South Wales,
Oh, yeah.
they're doing things
Awful.
like strip searches. Like,
I've heard so many horror stories
Yeah.
from New South Wales.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware.
yeah, and, like, underage strip searches as well. So we're, like, talking about traumatizing children.
Yeah.
And it's like, these are people who just want to have a good time on a weekend.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it shouldn't be lifelong trauma as a
Yeah.
result of that. Like, it makes no sense. And I think there's a sort of recognition of how damaging prisons are, because communities who developed and created harm reduction, when we say harm reduction, we don't talk about just health harms. We talk about harm reduction in terms of our housing, in terms of our legal status. And so, like, one of the harm reduction responses we have here in Victoria, in Australia, is what we call the diversion program. So that's like if you're going to court and you are about to go to jail,
Okay.
you have the option of going into treatment and avoiding jail if you go to treatment.
Oh.
So
Interesting.
it's not the best thing. It's a bit like coercing people into jail, but it's giving people options
Yep.
other than prison. And I think that comes from a recognition of how damaging prison is going to be and how non-rehabilitative
Yeah.
prisons are. So instead of trying to create career lifelong criminals, there's almost this recognition that we need to get people out of that like cycle.
Yeah. That's for sure. And maybe I'm speaking as an American, but like wrong imprisonment.
Yeah.
You know, like people being done in for like for crimes that they actually didn't commit, and because of like one thing or the other. That's why abolitionists have been, you know, so vocal about like, you know, jails need to be more. I don't know. Some people think jails should just go away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a lot of people think that that's a very extreme view, but
Yeah.
when you think about it, what do we want jails to do?
If you want to rehabilitate them,
Yeah.
have rehabilitation centers. And the one thing that actually is talking about jailing is now in America, like weed is legal almost everywhere else, but there's
Yes!
hundreds of thousands of people who are just like still serving their sentences, doing
Still.
exactly what these Apple Store weed shops are doing on a daily
Exactly.
basis.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just like if you want them to like, oh no, you did a bad thing, think about what you've done. Well, where would they think about that best? In a place where they're being traumatized and they come out and like, oh, I'm going to be another person in society now after that experience?
Yeah.
Like, it makes no sense. Like, rehab would be a better investment. You could be defunding that and putting that into those centers to be helping people.
Yeah, and it's expensive to keep people in jail.
It's
like,
expensive to keep people in jail.
Like, wouldn't you rather have them working, paying taxes out in the community? Okay, yes, there probably is a place where really, really violent...
Like serial killers. Yeah. Like
violent offenders.
Sure. But you don't need as many jails.
That's also probably the minority group like you were talking about
exactly.
earlier. Like
it's
that
always a
group of people.
minority, yeah. And even in that minority, there are reasons why people are like that, you know?
Yeah, yes.
And a lot of it is, more often than not their fault. Like, you know, society needs to take responsibility. And it's not just paying the bill for prisons. Yeah. It's actually about looking after people, giving them options, affirming their choices, holding them while they make their choices, holding safe space for them to make other choices if that's what you want them to do.
I hear you, because it's once again going back to the mental health care and giving people the tools that they need so they don't turn to these like violent, awful outlets, because we're not excusing what they've done, but we are saying that there's a cause, there is a reason.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And people are living with a lot of pain.
With a lot of pain.
We haven't given them the tools to deal with that pain.
Haven't.
They've gone to look for the tools themselves. We've given a lot of people a lot of stress. We've created living conditions that make it hard to be comfortable, productive, going to work every day. They're finding ways to be able to do that stuff themselves. Like, let's not punish them for like trying to be ordinary people.
Yep.
Like, that's...
I think grief is connected to it as well.
Absolutely.
I think grief is connected to it as well, because, again, we think of grief as an individual. Like, oh, that's you and your grief and your sorrow. You need to figure that out on your own. And there needs to be a more communal approach.
Absolutely. It takes a village for sure.
And not punish people.
And not punish people for having grief.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's crazy.
Absolutely.
That's so crazy. One of the places that I visited when I first moved to Australia that I found to be really, really interesting was up in New South Wales, Nimbin. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of Nimbin?
I have not.
Ri'chard, it's like in far north New South Wales.
New South Wales, yeah.
Almost in Queensland. Mm-hmm. And it's like a town where essentially, I'm using air quotes now because it's like, but weed is legal. It's not necessarily.
No, it's not necessarily.
It's not necessarily.
It's more like there is like a social consensus and acceptance of it.
Okay.
It's kind of like the United States now. That
like now in the States, it's like you can buy it right next to your grocery store. Nimbin was presented as this like place where people can just kind of do it freely, but the cops were there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Like every 420, we still have a big protest.
Yes.
We're still all up in Flagstaff Gardens. The cops turn up. They can see us all smoking joints. You know, they're not going to arrest all of us. That's that's the sort of reality they kind of have to sit with every day, right?
Yeah.
I do have to say, I was in Seattle in January.
Yeah.
And oh boy, I love weed shops.
Yeah.
They're like these like big fancy like showrooms.
That's why I'm like, I called it an Apple store. Like, it honestly is. Like,
spot on. And when I was there, they just brought out like weed flavored ice cream. I was like, how do you?
Oh, that is so dangerous.
I know. I'm like, how do you not eat the whole tub? Yeah. They sell really little tubs.
Self-control is not. When I'm like, nope. Yeah.
Oh man.
But like because of like where I work, I'm like wanting to talk to the people working there, and I've never heard such passionate young retail employees.
Yes.
And who are like really believe in what they're doing, who like fought for what they're doing.
Yeah.
In a way, it reminded me a lot about like the folks who work in harm reduction, like you know, coming from a community, coming from generations of activists to get to that point. And it was a really nice connection. Yeah. So to see, because you never see anyone happy to work in retail. Like that's proud and really into it.
Yes, and giving you recommendations. Absolutely. And if this is what you kind of want to do, and it's just like, wow, it's kind of like how far we've come. It was very, very cool. I was in Seattle. It was before Trump's inauguration. So but that's probably a whole other podcast.
But we'll leave it because we are running out of time. But one of the things I want to ask you, how would you engage people more with harm reduction in Victoria? Because I know it's statewide, like each state does things differently. Mm-hmm. If you had any like tips or pointers, people who just wanted to be safer just moving in this space? Because again, as you said before, everyone is doing drugs in some capacity, even if people abusing their medication, people passing on Adderall and Vyvanse to their friends.
Yeah.
Like if there's any like tips or trips you want to happen, I'm like, hey, if you're going to do it, be careful.
Yeah. So when people ask what harm reduction is, the quickest way to explain it to them is like if you think of drug and alcohol services in Victoria who want to engage with rehab, number about 18,000 people seeking rehab services. Okay. We support everyone else. So if you're not ready for rehab, we'll support you. We support people who use drugs wherever they are. So however, whatever your relationship is with drugs, we are there for you. So just letting people know that that's a response. We've been around since 1985. Like it's been quite a long time. The thing I think that holds a lot of people back is they don't realize that we exist.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like we exist as part of intersectional communities. So Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, queer people, migrants and refugees, people who've experienced incarceration. You know, we are part of all of those communities and we support you as part of all of those communities as well. So, you know, there's always a response. Whatever your question is, whatever support you need, we exist. Yeah. And if it doesn't exist with us, we will make it happen. Like, that's why we're always coming up with like new stuff, like drug checking services, like fixed site drug checking services, NSPs, anything you need. There's always a crew of people working on this, and that's what harm reduction is. It came from, you know, people who nobody supported, finding ways to support each other. Like, welcome aboard.
Yeah, for sure. And then when I spoke to Cooper on the street, Drug Policy Australia, I guess, is there for advocacy.
Yeah.
And they're all about, like, the laws that are here in Australia. So be the change you want to see for the people that can vote here. Like, I don't know. I want to say vote good. That doesn't make sense. Like, you know what I mean?
But yeah, even like you were describing before, realize when you say drug users, are you talking about yourself?
Yeah.
You know, like be that person, you know, be the person that puts their hand up when they say, I don't want people to get shot. Like,
yeah. You don't think people should like just die because it's never not you. It's like, oh no, not me though, not me. Even though I have to pop a pill in order to like, you know,
get through the day. It's
just like nobody ever thinks about that. They're thinking about someone different to them. But yeah, we need a more holistic approach to this, and voting is a way to help, and then harm reduction in the services that you guys provide is the way to go.
Not othering people who use drugs. Like, you know, they're you, they're your family, they're your friends. You know, if you think you don't know someone who's regularly using drugs.
Oh, yes, you do.
Yeah, you most assuredly do.
Oh,
and
yes,
it's definitely one of those situations where, like, in a society, like, you are only as good as the person who's the most vulnerable, though. So you should be voting for those people, considering that you could easily be one of them. Like, we're all 2 paychecks away from being unhoused. We're all one illness away from being out of work and being in those positions. So this whole individual mentality is what's ruining things. Like, that's what's causing the issues. So it's beautiful that things like this exist, that you've been working in the field for 20 years, and that even, I want to say Cooper. Is it Cooper?
It's Cooper.
It's Cooper. I keep saying
Connor
because you called him Connor earlier.
I know. I've just been trying to shout him out because I'm going to send him this episode when it comes out and everything, because I was telling him about it because I was really excited about it because I felt called over to him, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to do my one-time
talk to
donation.
A stranger.
Yeah, talk to a stranger, hear the spiel.
Make a mixtape.
Make a mixtape. Full circle.
Yeah.
Full circle. What a
Collaborate, write a musical.
What a callback. But as I saw people just like walking past them and ignoring them and stuff, the way that that's because that's what people want to do. They just want to ignore the issue. And I was like, you know what? I'm feeling called over here for a reason. And I wanted to hear the information, figure out a way when I become a citizen, I will certainly figure out how to support Drug Policy Australia, because it's
so important. Yeah,
it's so important.
And we're in a loneliness epidemic.
Loneliness epidemic.
There are movements that are relevant to you, that you can be passionate about, that represent your people, your communities, people in your family. Like, get out and be a part of it. Like,
absolutely.
Community, as we always say over here.
Always, famously, we always say that.
That's the only way to get through this whole thing called life.
For sure, amen.
Absolutely.
Speaking of amen, wind up.
Wind up!
I know you mentioned that people don't really know that you exist. Can you let our listeners know how to find your services and contact your organization?
Absolutely. Harm Reduction Victoria. I want to say just Google us.
We do say to Google it.
Google
so honestly,
it.
that's a fair
Google it.
response.
Yeah. Oh, like it's at vic.org.au. People get confused because they think we're a HR group. And
Oh my gosh,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so
it's
funny.
like the opposite. So yeah, Harm Reduction Victoria is where we're at. We also have like all throughout Australia, there's a drug user organisation in your state or territory. You can find them via our national group called AVIL. So that's AIVL.org.au. AVIL stands for the Australian Ivy League, by the way, as in intravenous. Yeah, so there's a organisation in every Australian state and territory, and yeah, you can find them there.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for coming. I learned so many things. I know I'm listening back to this and like, wow, let me just write that down. Like this topic can be addressed in so many other opportunities. We can expand on that in so many other ways, but this is an excellent start and we're so grateful for your time.
Absolutely.
And for you being here and just knowing that people like you are out there doing the good do. And we love to spotlight people like that just because there's so many things that we don't know. And then as we find out, it's good to just share information because like that's how we get better.
For sure.
Yes. So thank you for spending time with us
Oh,
today,
it's been
Christian.
an absolute pleasure.
Yes. And you guys out there, just love on each other.
Absolutely.
Just love people, even the people you don't understand. They're just humans.
And that's a beautiful way to end it. Until next time, I'm Ri'chard.
And I'm Nicole.
And this has been Melanated in Melbourne.
See ya.
This has been Melanated in Melbourne, a podcast that analyzes the Australian lifestyle from the lens of two Black American besties. Visit us at melanatedinmelbourne.com or follow us on Instagram to send us your comments or questions. Thank you for listening.